let's go East. It's time. We're going to spar on this one a little bit. Your New York Knickerbockers, Jim Turvey, and they are the 2 seed. Philadelphia 76ers are the 7 seed. At our host, BetMGM, we have a pick'em on the series. Both teams at minus 110. I don't recall seeing a lot of series where we just have a straight up pick going into the series. On the spread, Sixers minus 1.5 is plus 140. Knicks plus 1.5 is minus 175. I suspect you can effectively flip those around too. So I don't even know if I pulled the right lines there, but that is where we're at. Knicks Sixers. This is going to be a fun series. Well, depending on how you define fun, it's going to be a close series. If you thought that the Philadelphia game in the play-in was a fun game, boy, have I got a treat for you. You are going to have a heck of a time watching this series. So I want to start here, Jim. We saw these teams play 4 games in the season, and tongue-in-cheek, because we probably didn't see them play the 4 games. But I'm guessing you saw them play Philadelphia a few times. Do you think we can take anything away from the season series? The Knicks won 3-1.
I don't think we can take a whole lot away from it. And I almost want to punt it back to you because I saw another question on the rundown that I think is potentially even more interesting, that has to do with, we didn't see it because these 2 teams had 2 brief peaks, and we're kind of trying to figure out which of those peaks we can trust and who's closest to their peak and who at 80% of their peak has more value. And I think those questions to me hold more intrigue. At least I dug into a few of them. Players are missing left and right. I also think that there is, both teams are, or at least the Knicks, I think, are very different post All-Star break. I think 3 of the 4 were before the deadline. So I didn't find a whole lot looking through both this season and last. I didn't find a whole lot of matchup stuff that caught my eye. But did you have stuff that caught your eye?
I do, but I realize I'm a bad host. I forgot to get our best bets at the top, way we like them. So let's do best bets. Jim, who you got for best series bet in Knicks Sixers?
I made it complicated the last one. I said 40,000 words, and I said Jokic 15 times, and I gave 18 different props. This one, Knicks minus 110, done.
All right. I'm on the other side. I'm on Sixers, but I'm going to take Sixers minus 1.5 plus 155. And look, I'll just be transparent. I'm on Sixers. I'm just on the other side, but I have zero faith, none, in Philadelphia going on the road to MSG and winning a Game 7. I don't need it. I don't need it in my bet. I don't think it's happening. I don't think they have the mental ability to go and get that game. So I'll just give it back. I don't need it. I'll take Sixers in 6 or less, get a little more juice out of it at plus 155. Okay, here's what I saw from the season series when they played. Embiid didn't play 3 of the games. And the 4th one he did play, he missed 10 days right afterward. So I'm going to have to presume that implies that he wasn't quite healthy. That was kind of in the stretch right before he was out for a long time. So what did I see in the games? Philadelphia got crushed on the glass. They couldn't get to the line. They couldn't score. They didn't defend. All that stuff is literally the exact stuff that happened to them without Embiid. Like when I did the profiles for the team, and when I have an article up on betting Philadelphia 76ers futures, that profile I just said, lost on the glass, can't get to the line, can't score, can't defend. That's it. That's Joel Embiid. That's the difference. You take him away, that's exactly the profile. So I don't think I learned anything there. What I learned is, yeah, they suck without Joel Embiid. We already knew that. Like, if he can't go, if he gets hurt again, we're not having a fun series anymore. It's just going to be like Philadelphia's not a playoff team without Joel Embiid. We have a lot of data this season that makes that pretty clear. Like they are, I know they're a play-in team anyway. They're the Bulls-Hawks kind of play-in team, not the Sixers kind of play-in team. If you take Joel Embiid off the roster, about the play-in game, I am certainly not as excited about my Philly futures as I was before that game. Not that I was really ever excited. It's Philly after all. We know me, and not exactly my favorite team ever. Embiid's not either healthy or fit. I'm not sure which one. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say it's probably a little bit of both, but probably more of just a ramping back up to fitness thing. I was okay with my futures if Philly had to play Boston right away because, okay, well, Embiid's at his healthiest and most rested. I'm not sure that was going to work out well for me based on what we saw. Like, he was tired by the end of warmups, as they commented about, and he had hands on knees. He's finger up in the air, checking out multiple times. This is going to be a grind of a series. This is going to be a tough physical. I think long series, long games, like he's got to be ready, and he did not look quite ready for that. Now, here's why I bring that up. Here's what I like. I think the NBA did this, and I'm sorry to Knicks fans here. I wrote an article about the Sixers after the play-in game. I think they saved their season. I think the season was over if they lost that game because they would have to play Friday night and then early on Sunday against the Celtics, and now you get Boston right away. Instead, they get 2 days off before game one. That's as much as you're going to get in the playoffs. 2 days off. That's good for Embiid. Then normal rest game two. Then it's spaced out. 2 days off, game three. 2 more days off, game four. You think the NBA did that on purpose just to make sure that they get Joel a little bit of rest? Like they want to give us the MVP, right? They want to give us that. So to me, that's an edge that Philadelphia almost lost, but saved this way, where Embiid's going to get as much rest as he can and be at the best version he can be. I don't know what that can be anymore, but he's going to get that before game one and game three and game four. So I do like that just little tiny edge there. You brought up about, okay, what about the peak versions of these teams? So I'll be honest. I think peak version of the Knicks happened like right in the dead of NFL playoffs, and I honestly didn't see it a lot. So tell me, I've got some numbers, but paint the picture of what is the peak version of the Knicks at their best now that OG is back in the lineup. What's that look like? And then I'll add some numbers to it.
Yeah, I think the peak version of this Knicks team, we're almost at that peak point. You know, there is no Randall, and that I'm going to circle back to some of my questions about the Knicks, even though I am on their side of things. You know, I want to lay out both sides of it. My questions do center around, you know, offensively, potentially missing Randall as, you know, the 1B to Brunson. But I think the peak of this team is about they finished the season with a net rating, adjusted net rating of about plus 4.6. That was withstanding injury after injury after injury. I think this team right now, fully healthy, is about a plus 5 to 6 net adjusted net rating team. Now, I think Philadelphia's peak is about a plus 7 or 8. You could even argue, you know, they were up in the 9-10. Now I think they loaded up on cream puffs, and I think they beat the cream puff teams in a way that maybe skews those numbers a little bit more. I'd have them around a 7 or an 8. So I can see how if both teams were at their full peak, I do think this should be around a pick 'em. But I don't think Philadelphia is at their pure peak right now. And I think the Knicks are very close. Missing Randall is definitely important. But I think that Brunson, against this type of coverage he's going to get with DiVincenzo, with the role that he has stepped into, and then just the defensive ability to put two centers on Joel Embiid that are two of the 7 best defensive centers by, you know, advanced metrics. I think that is a matchup I like for the Knicks. I think they are closer to their peak, and I don't think the gap between the peak of the two teams is far enough that I'm fine saying if Philadelphia isn't as close to their peak, we should be pricing them still as, you know, a pick 'em when they have to go on the road for 4 of the 7 games.
Yeah, I think that you have some really good fair points there. So the numbers for the Knicks, I don't even know if this is necessarily a pivot point, but I think it's pretty close. Do you know when OG joined the team? Do you know when the trade happened? Was it like right around New Year's?
No, I think it was a little bit after that. I want to say because I think he was hurt when he came over too. I think he debuted like late January, I want to say.
So the numbers I have are just calendar year numbers. So when the calendar flipped from 2023 to 2024, the New York Knicks defense before January 1st was 19th by defensive rating. Since January 1st, second in defensive rating. And the big swing there is effective field goal percentage. They've gone from 23rd to 4th. Now, I made that similar point when we did the Dallas series preview, and I think that shows Dallas's defense to be a little bit fraudulent. It's a much smaller sample. It's only about 20 games or so, and I don't really see the Dallas personnel that makes me believe that they should have jumped. I think Dallas went from like 27th to 3rd in their sample. I see a little bit more personnel for New York. OG Anunoby, yeah, pretty good defender, like possibly as good as any perimeter defender, and changes the way you do things, the way you scheme. Tom Thibodeau, pretty good defensive coach. Like, I can buy a version of the Knicks that are really, really this good defensively. 23rd to 4th feels like a little bit of a suspect jump. Like, just instinctively, it makes me think, okay, maybe there's a little bit of some shooting luck in there. Nonetheless, it's a very good defense that already had a lot of good principles in play. The offense actually has been about the same, maybe a little worse in the same span, But the net rating, even despite that, jumped from 12th to 2nd. Your numbers had a 5 or 6. Since January 1st, they're plus 7.3 straight up net rating. Number 2 in the NBA, I assume behind the Celtics, because everything's behind the Celtics, right? So that's the Knicks. Here's the case for the Sixers as far as what their peak looks like. And this was in my article on Sixers futures. Up until Christmas, to me, that was the peak version of the Sixers so far. They were 20-8, second offensively, third defensively, net rating plus 11.5. Now, I'm gonna say it. This is about the same sample of the Dallas sample. I just kind of like got, shrugged off a little bit. It's not enough games to really be certain, but plus 11.5, that's like 2.5 points better than Boston in that stretch. They basically, before Christmas, they were the Celtics. They were 1B to the 1A that was the Celtics. And frankly, they might have been 1A to the 1B in that scenario. They, since then, while Embiid was out, are 20th offensively, 19th defensively. And at the numbers that change, obviously the free throws dropped way out. That's going to happen without Embiid. The defense really dropped out. EFG defensively went from number 5 to number 14. Defensive rebounding, 6th place with Embiid, 29th without. They got crushed on the glass without Joel Embiid. That's a really important number for this series because the overall metric looks pretty average for them. And we know how New York likes to hit the offensive glass and get some easy stuff. They need that good defensive rebounding rating. Offensively, with Joel Embiid, 9th in EFG, without 28th. They're a terrible offense without Joel Embiid. And you see it kind of cascade also. Tyrese Maxey, we love our BPMs, Jim. Tyrese Maxey, without Joel Embiid, is like a 2 BPM player for the season. With Embiid in the lineup, he jumps to 4. He gets better. His usage goes up. His assist goes up. His assist turnovers are better. His shooting efficiency is better. Duh, you're playing next to an MVP type player. You're going to be a lot better. Nick Batum's another guy. We saw him have a huge play-in game. He's played really well with Joel Embiid in the lineup, and we saw it, play out in the play-in. So we haven't seen that yet now with the Kyle Lowry, with the Buddy Hield, with maybe D'Anthony Melton if he comes back. I'm not sure he's in for this series. But to me, the upside of the Sixers is Joel Embiid changing everything about the profile, making the defense way better, adding the rebounding, but then also his presence allowing everyone else to be what they're supposed to be. Tyrese Maxey, I don't think wins most improved player if Joel Embiid is just out for the season. His numbers probably are higher, but the stuff that you and I want to look at, the efficiency and all those things is not going to be that good. So I think that Maxey and I think Buddy Hield will fit well, and Batum, I think those guys being better with Embiid is what you have to believe in if you think we're getting the peak Sixers. But I will admit that I didn't think we were getting the peak version because Joel Embiid is coming off a knee injury. Like, you're not going to get 100% Embiid. Whatever percent we're at is definitely a lower percent than I had hoped for when I made my futures bet. Like, I don't know where we're at. Maybe I hoped that we were at like 80%, and it sure looked more at like 65 or 70%. I don't know. Who knows what the percentage is, but that is a direct correlation to who the Sixers are and how close to their peak that they are. That percentage, whatever you're guessing that to be, is what the Sixers ceiling is. And that's why I dwelled on it so long, because my case for Sixers futures and in the series depends fully on, is Joel Embiid going to do the thing, because it's everything about who the Sixers are.
Well, I think it's such a good point that Embiid coming back matters beyond just his numbers, that he really does open things up. I think you saw that in the Heat game, like you said, Batum and Maxey look better. What I want to see, and I think the Knicks would be smart enough to do that, I almost think this is a series where you say Embiid at 65, 70, 80%, you have to be the one to beat us. Yeah. And I think that they have the defensive centers to do that, and that they should really say, Embiid, all right, we're going to take away the other stuff and make the Philly offense stagnant in that sense. We haven't seen Embiid since the new whistle either. He is famously one of the biggest grifters in the league. I want to see what he looks like with the playoff whistle, the tighter whistle in general that the NBA has put in. Against the Heat, he really did not look good. He got some points by the end, but they were giving him open threes. I did just slip into Knicksdom. I don't usually do that. I'm not the other future Jay who is, the most gung-ho Knicks cheerleader. I'm the the supposedly sane one. I do slip into it every now and then. But I don't think the Knicks are going to give Embiid open threes, but I do think they should challenge Embiid to beat them and not allow the players around Embiid to really flourish, because they're giving so much attention to someone who at 100% will absolutely destroy you in a series if you do not give him attention. But at 65, 70, 80%, I don't think you really should be giving him that much attention to allow Philly's offense around him to thrive. And it's so funny because I have for a while been the high person on Embiid. So I feel like I'm taking crazy pills a little bit to now be the person at Action who is the lowest on Embiid. But again, remember this conversation we had early in the season with the ducking, right? It was all about Embiid ducking. These are the road games that he has faced all year that are any sort of a challenge. He had opening night against Milwaukee. That was a loss. It was a close loss, but a loss. He had at OKC, who, Chet Holmgren is an awesome defender, but he's also skinnier than I am and skinnier than I was in college, even, I think. You have Orlando. That was a good win against a good defense and a team that actually kind of, theoretically is a little bit like the Knicks. I don't think they have the scoring ceiling that the Knicks have with Brunson, but that's a good win. He was at Indy, lost by 12, at the Warriors, lost by 12. And then on his return 2 weeks ago, they did win in Miami. But this regular season Miami team, that's not even, a real test. I think this Knicks team is definitively better than the regular season version of the Heat. He has faced and passed one road test all season. Now they have to go into New York. Now, New York, it's always weird because it seems like it should be an absolute zoo where teams struggle to win because it is such a great atmosphere, but teams kind of do well in New York. It's not always the home court that the Knicks hope it is. It still is a very rowdy atmosphere. It's going to be really a spotlight series. The two of these big Northeast cities is going to be getting a lot of attention with Embiid. He's got to go into New York 4 times this series. I don't see it. I do like, if you are on the Philadelphia side of things, I think your pick is very wise. I think to cut off that game 7, because I don't see this team going into New York and winning in 7. But I would make this, almost like Knicks minus 150, and I would play it out to minus 140-ish. So I really am heavy on the Knicks. And I'll caveat this by saying that, yes, I am a Knicks fan, but definitely not usually the highest person on the Knicks. That's why I feel a little bit crazy. I'm usually more skeptical of them. Last season, I picked them to lose in the first round to the Cavs even. That was a head-to-head that you got me on. So I just really don't see a universe unless it really is truly just fitness and they get these rest spots throughout the series, and that by the end he is able to have fully ramped up. That to me is the path. But it seems to me with Embiid in the postseason, if he's at 80%, he doesn't go up to 100, he goes down to 60. And I think that it's much more likely that that's the direction of his injury and health, much more so than something we've never seen before, which is Embiid get healthier as the postseason goes along.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. I think as you were talking too, I realized I think maybe I cut off the game 7 out of my bet. I think perhaps I didn't take it far enough. I don't really feel like I need a Sixers sweep priced in either. I don't feel like that is a very likely outcome that I need to have bet on. So maybe I should just skip the minus 1.5. I don't have the numbers for it here, but you can just do the bet that I've done on the Cavs, the bet that I've done on the Clippers. So Sixers in 5, Sixers in 6, splitting the bet in half, I think is really the target that I'm shooting for here. Like this, typically, just kind of behind the curtains, if I'm betting something like that, if I'm betting something very specific, it's usually not because, oh man, I know exactly what's going to happen and this is the outcome and I just want to nail it. It's actually the opposite. It's actually like, man, I'm kind of uncertain here, but let me remove some of the parts that I don't think are likely and let me juice it to get something worth my while. Because if I'm not sure, then I'm probably just not going to play it. But that's not hashtag team content anyways. You got to make a pick. So if I'm going to make a pick, let me make it worth my while. Because I think too, I looked at Philly to win game 1 and the series, like that double that a lot of books have. I know BetMGM has that one up. I don't like that one. I'm not recommending it, but I like to have an angle where it's like, okay, here's a plus number that's long enough that I can hit. And it's also long enough that I can play again later. If I'm like, all right, well, that's not going to go well for me, I can play a different angle now because I can play, give me a couple different outs rather than like I'm sacrificing outs now because I can buy back some more later. So what do you think? Am I right to to cut my bet down even further and just make it Sixers in 5 or 6 instead?
No, I like that a lot because you and I both because you need to ramp up for Joel and you need to avoid the game 7. So I very much I do think if I like that even more to play the 4-1 or the 4-2 if you're on Philly. Do you mind if I do a little bit on Steel Manning? So I've done a lot pro Knicks. I do want to get into when I looked at if I were to be scared off of this bet, what would do it for me? And Jonathan Macri, awesome Knicks writer out there, shout out to him. He had a great article this week talking through some of the key numbers that correlate with wins for the Knicks. The one that really jumped out to me, and I think is kind of the pivot point in a broader sense as well, is 3-pointers made. So when the Knicks have made 16 threes in a game, they're 17-3. When they've hit 42% of their threes, they're 17-3. When they are clicking from beyond the arc, they're good. That seems obvious, right? Like, duh, every team, when they make threes, things go well. But it's not as true for every team. He pointed out the Sixers are only 8-6 in those scenarios. So I think it is extra true of New York. And where I think it's really interesting is Dante DiVincenzo is going to be very, very, very important in this series for a guy who really has broken out this year. And I do think it's a genuine breakout, but we have not seen him dominate a postseason series. Like, he has not been the second leading scorer in a postseason series that the team won. Like, that is not a thing that's happened. I think that's a very fair. If you're skeptical of the Knicks, I think that is the place to be skeptical. Is DiVincenzo really going to be this good, the second leading scorer on a Knicks team that's going to take out this team that at its peak, the Sixers were nearly on par with the Celtics? I think that's a very fair question. Where I come back to swinging around back to the Knicks, though, is that Brunson has just been unbelievable. And this is such a good matchup for him. Since Randall went out, he's averaging 32 points a game. And I think we think, oh, it's because Tibbs is playing him 48 minutes. Ha, 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 ha. Tibbs has only played him 35 minutes a game since Randall went out. So there is a ceiling there for him to get to clear that number. And in a matchup with a hobbled Embiid playing drop defense, Brunson could go absolutely nuts this series. Joe Dolera, when we were kind of, lightly previewing it, mentioned he wants his over for game 1. Shocking, I know. Series points leader, that's one. We don't have these series leader bets out yet, but I think Jalen Brunson as a series points leader is a way for me to fade Embiid a little bit and for a way for me to be all over Brunson in a series where it's just amazing seeing what he has done. Candace Parker, who I love, big W guy over here, but she did have, a kind of ridiculous comment about Jalen Brunson and slipping in the second round. But then I was trying to defend her and I went and looked, I was like, oh no, I remember being Brunson not quite as good in the second round. No, even in that Heat series, he was incredible. He awesome. Really is. He's one of these players, kind of like a Jamal Murray that we talk about, who does seem to have an ability when things tighten up in the postseason, he's able to do even better. We saw it even back in Dallas. So I think this is an awesome series for Brunson. I think DiVincenzo can get away with being, 80% of what he has been for the last few months. And they can still be in good shape because of the defense, the depth. OG Anunoby is going to be immense. They're going to be throwing him all over the place. I think he'll probably do a fair amount of work on Maxey, which the size there seems extreme, and Maxey is very quick. But I'm just curious to see how Tibbs approaches that. But I do think that Brunson can be surrounded by a lot of Bs, and he doesn't actually need another A scoring wise, as long as those guys are doing it on the defensive end. And he's shown the ability to carry the load offensively in a way that doesn't seem sustainable, but has led to success even in the postseason.
Yeah, that's I'm going to come back to the Brunson thing in a second, because it kind of ties to the question that I ultimately end up on one side of, but maybe need to rethink a little bit. DiVincenzo, before I forget, 4, 4, 3, and 4 made threes this season against Philadelphia in the matchups. So I definitely had that down. Again, series leader props not up yet that we've seen, but DiVincenzo, I'll be looking at his number for threes. I assume he's probably going to be the favorite there, but maybe game to game too might be the better way to do DiVincenzo there. Sixers 3-point defense has been pretty strong this season.
It has. So, I meant to mention that as well. They definitely are a good defensive team and against the Knicks. Like I said, that is a key correlation to stats. So that was something I meant to mention. That's a good catch.
So I come back to where we talked about like the peak version of the teams, and I'm not sure exactly how close we're going to get to either of those. I think you're right. I think the Knicks are closer just because of health. The peak version of both teams is a really, really good defensive team. The Knicks are the better team of the defenses, but I think we're going to get a very defensive series. And every time I found it, like, okay, here's maybe an edge for a team, then it was like, nope, the other defense has the exact thing there. So first of all, I'm looking at unders for the series. Like, I think this is extremely an unders game-to-game series. Knicks are last in pace. We know obviously the Sixers are much slower when Joel Embiid plays. So I think that slow, like 90s style basketball here, unders. I did notice in the season series, maybe it's just small sample, Kelly Oubre and Paul Reed both had some really nice games. Those are energy guys that can add a little something for the Sixers that is not out there with a lot of their guys. Obviously, Maxey is kind of the young legs there as well. So here's some of the other matchups that just don't work out. Sixers, number 3 in points off turnovers. That's a way they get a lot of easy points each game. The Knicks are number 5 defensively in allowing the fewest points off turnovers. Jalen Brunson never turns it over that much. So there goes that. On the other side, the Knicks are number 2 in points off turnovers. The Sixers defense is number 2 fewest points off turnovers allowed. So get rid of that advantage for both teams. That lowers your offensive rating because those are the easy buckets that your team is getting. Sixers, number 6 second chance points, dominating the glass. The Knicks, number 6 defensively in second chance points. They're not letting you dominate the glass. That's where Mitch and Hartenstein, all the guys are going to get the rebounds there. The Knicks, number 1 offensive rebounding. That was my whole cap on the thing last year, is that would dominate against Cleveland and get them the win. This is why I mentioned that rebounding thing earlier here. Without Embiid, this was the second worst defensive rebounding team in the NBA, and a spot where when Embiid can't play, the Knicks should be pounding the offensive glass and getting some easy stuff. And maybe that's the story. Maybe that's where I actually had a note here. I don't really know if I trust either bench. Maybe that's the way to trust a bench. Maybe New York can get a bench advantage just by hitting the glass with Embiid out, and maybe that's a factor here. But with Embiid, they jumped to 6th in defensive rebounding. And New York, though, number 6 points in the paint defense. Obviously, that's where Joel Embiid gets a lot of his points. Not so many anymore, but plenty of them. So just every advantage that I found and said, okay, maybe here. Nope. Defense takes that away. I think is going to be a story, unfortunately, because we don't like to talk about it, but we do talk about it. I think free throws are going to be a big story here. The Sixers foul a lot. That's a thing their defense does. In the matchups this season, the Knicks got a lot of free throws. They had a big free throw advantage a lot of times, and the Sixers are the number 1 free throw team. You talked about Joel Embiid. So far, since he's back, he's still over 10 free throws a game. I checked that. That was a big factor I wanted to see. Did he still get the free throws? However, he's played nobody. He's played a bunch of terrible teams, so I don't know if that free throw thing necessarily holds up against a team like the Knicks, who, by the way, another advantage that goes away, number 6, fewest free throws allowed by the defense. The Knicks don't foul that much. If they don't let the Sixers get to the line, that's not just points taken away. Those are little gaps for Joel Embiid to catch his breath, get a little bit of oxygen going again. Like, that stuff is all going to add up. And I think, too, where's the free throw going to make a difference? Home court. Now you got back to where New York's the home team. Philadelphia maybe gets the better whistle at home. That's how this goes in the playoffs, but you got one less home game. So I kept thinking, okay, I think I like Philly better. Where's the advantage? And I didn't come away being like, okay, I guess I like New York better. I just came to like, I don't know who I like. Like, everything cancels out, and I just like all the offense cancels out. So this is where I'm going to circle back to your Brunson point. For me, is at the end of the day, if it all comes down to being so even, and it comes down mostly to offense, I think, in slow games, defensive games, then I have to believe in Embiid because he was playing at an MVP level this year. And if I think about the hierarchy of players, this is a Matt thing that he loves to do. I think it's very clearly the top 3, Embiid, then a gap, then Brunson, then a gap, then Maxey. And then I don't know who goes after that. Probably a number of Knicks players, perhaps, and maybe that matters. But, I mean, of course it matters. I think the key thing for me is this. I don't know how big the gap is from Maxey to the guys below, but the key is the gap from Embiid to Brunson as significant as I need it to be to feel good about the series as a Sixers better? Because I don't get MVP Embiid this series. I only get the current version I get playoff Embiid, and I get the like 65-80% version. And I don't think I'm really discounting Brunson. He's been awesome. I think he's been probably a top 10 player this season. I think there was a clear difference there. And in a series where buckets are going to be hard to come by, I'm taking Embiid. I am picking Philadelphia in the series. But if I'm having some second thoughts here, it's because maybe that gap's not quite as big. Here's my question for you, though. I think that for the Knicks to win the series, I think that it has to not just be that gap is small. I think Jalen Brunson has to be the best player in the series. Do you think Jalen Brunson can be the best player in this series with the Embiid version that we're getting?
Well, let me lead by saying this is like the origin story of like a time traveler, because I somehow need to get the clip of you saying that Embiid was playing at MVP level and is going to knock out the New York Knicks. I'm going to send it to myself last year and just break my own brain. So actually, I'll be honest, I'm right there with you. I think a big part of my cap is that I think Jalen Brunson will be the best player in this year. Like I think he has played at, if you add in like the full length of the season, I think he was basically a top 5 player in the season. Now, I don't think that he has the peak of a top 5 player. Obviously, Embiid's peak is higher, but I don't think that Embiid is at the level that he will be better than Jalen Brunson in this series. And I know that is likely the exact point of line of demarcation for me, you, and Matt. And I know Matt is, I believe he's on the Sixers as well. I'm not 100% sure about that. But I think he would probably say that he trusts Embiid more in this. I've actually been a Brunson skeptic. When he came to New York, I was a little bit skeptical, with that contract. Even in last postseason, I was like, I don't think he's going to be able to keep this up. I have come around to the point where I am now a full Jalen believer. I know he does it very much more on one side, whereas Embiid is able to do on two. But I think with this version of Embiid is really bringing, 1.5 side, or like 2 60% sides, I guess maybe it's a better way of phrasing that. And that Brunson's, what he brings on offense is very legitimate, and it doesn't disappear at all in the postseason. And so I do think that Jalen Brunson will be the better player in this series.
Let me say it a different way, like in math nerdy terms here. I think that the ceiling for Joel Embiid clearly is higher. We agree on that. And maybe he even gets to that ceiling a couple times. I think as things stand right now, with the version of Embiid we have, the floor for Embiid is much lower. In any game where Embiid gets closer to his floor, if he is not playing well, if he's not hitting the shots, or he's just too tired that game, or foul trouble, like that comes with the exhaustion thing, that's Jalen Brunson's variance on his outcome is very low. He seems like a very low, steady, no variance sort of player that he's going to show up, he's going to bring you the lunch pail and just give you the goods every single night. Joel Embiid, especially playoff Embiid that we've seen, is high variance. I don't know if the Sixers can afford high variance Embiid. They're going to win the games when Embiid plays like an MVP level. Maybe they get 2 games of that. They're going to win those games. But if Embiid is bad Embiid that night, if he's not even really bad Embiid, just like below average, they can't win those games. The Knicks are too good to win games with not like all-star plus at least Embiid. Unless Maxey had some really good games, hit some big numbers. Maybe Maxey can step up and close the gap. I think I'll have to see it there. I think we would have stopped talking too much more about Sixers Knicks, or I'm going to talk myself right out of my Sixers bet that I'm recommending to people. Really though, you and I think are not, you're fairly on the Knicks, so you gave it like a minus 140 or 50. I came in saying I think it's basically a coin flip, and after talking all this through, I think I'm back there again. I think it's pretty close to a coin flip. I think it's very weird and interesting that we're close to even odds. Who do you think closes as the favorite when game one tips? And I know you probably have seen at other books, we already have a lean, but who do you think is the actual favorite here? Because I've got a historical thing to add.
Well, I'm very interested by this because it opened at Knicks plus 105 for a brief fleeting moment. In fact, I even think it was plus 110 for a second. Yeah. And it actually dropped right when we were doing Buckets Live. And I was like, oh, I got to grab this. And it was funny because Matt, not to blow up his spot a little bit too much, but he's like, no, that's going to move more towards Philadelphia. Trust me. I was like, that's insane. I don't know how that's going to happen. Now, it has not happened that way, but I am curious if we get late money that moves it back towards Philadelphia. If there are some people who are hesitant on Embiid and they want to see a full, clean bill of health, and it moves a little bit back that way. I would guess that I feel like it's pretty settled. Sometimes, I mean, wasn't this last? I'm not the football guy here. Wasn't the last Super Bowl it like settled into a coin flip, and everyone's like, it won't be a coin flip, and then it just stayed as a coin flip the whole time?
Yeah. Yeah, things settle in a little quicker than you think, especially when it's like such a big, clearly like public sort of market like this one will be. So yeah, I think that makes sense. Some books out there still have Philly as the slight favorite, and so I think why Matt thought it would be higher is he and Raheem Palmer and Raheem, from our good buddy from Buckets Past, now at the Ringer. Raheem, I think, shared a tweet with us in our little group chat that I forget who the name was, but there was a tweet from an odds maker basically saying that before the play-in game, if the Sixers played the Knicks, I think the projection for Philadelphia by the book, the odds maker was like minus 170 for Philadelphia, like a clear advantage. And I think that number, I mean, maybe that just was off a little bit, but I think the way that Philadelphia looked so poor, like just didn't show up in that game, I think brought that number back down to a point where, look, if it was Sixers minus 170, given the analysis I've now done on the series, I can't say I'd be playing that number then, right? I think it'd have to be on the Knicks that way. So,
well, can I hop in really quick?
Where the number should go.
I'll say that Matt's response to that, I know what he would say. He would say, do not trust that one Miami game. They make everyone look ugly and hurt and gross. And I do think that is a very fair point. I'm just it breaks my brain that they would be 170 beforehand. And I'm curious if that is, if it's someone like Circa, then, that if there's someone like a big name in the market, that's definitely someone you want to pay attention to. But it's definitely one where I am not on that side of things.
So here's the history that I found interesting, and I want to add this in because it fits for this and two other series. It's very rare that a lower seed, a worse seed, like the Sixers are here, it's very rare to have the worst seed team favored in a series outside of the 4-5s. Throw the 4-5s out, like those are the coin flip series we always know. According to the data that I found, since 1969, so lots of years of data, there's only 7 times that we've had the worst seed on the road favored in the first round. Now, one of those was Warriors Kings last year. That's where I pulled the stat from because I had this on Buckets a year ago. Here's the crazy thing. The favored team, the worst seeded team, so the Sixers in this scenario, presuming that they're slight favorites here, the favored team is 2-5 in the series. Both of the times they won a series took a game 7 to get there. The Warriors probably needed a De'Aaron Fox injury to get there last year. So the better seeded team, the Knicks in this scenario, is 26-17 game by game in those series. Now look, it's a small sample, 7 out of like 50 years. It's pretty noisy. One of the series is Suns-Lakers, when the Lakers went up and then Anthony Davis got injured and then the bottom fell out. So the better seed won the series, even though it sure as heck looked like the other team was going to win the series. So like just that changes, like 3 wins go the other direction, and maybe the trend isn't a trend anymore. Nonetheless, doesn't make me feel good, but also it's very weird that the Suns are a bigger favorite. They're the worst seeded team against Minnesota. The Pacers are a favorite. They're the worst seeded team. And these are not 4 or 5 matchups. 7 times in 1969 till now. What is that? Over 50 years, 7 times. We have 3 series right now that the team that is favored is not the better seed. And
that's an awesome stat. That is such a good stat.
Right? And we might have gotten more if the series had broken the right way with the play-in. Like if OKC had to play a different possible outcome for them or a healthier outcome, it's possible we might have had another one there. If it was like the Warriors, maybe, or if it was the Lakers, I think certainly we might have added another one to the list. So I don't know what that means, but 2-5 for the team that's supposed to be good, but actually they weren't good. So their record is bad. So they're the underdog, but actually they're not the underdog. We're making them the betting favorite. History has not smiled on them. We're long. We got to wrap this up here. Series angles as far as prop leaders. There's no prop angles up yet, but man, when they post it, give me the Josh Hart rebound series leader. Against Philadelphia this year, he averaged 14.3 rebounds a game. Here's a rebound. He had 10 every game. He had 19 in one game. He had 11, 12, and 15. I think the 19 was a game where he had a 20, 19, 10 triple-double that I'm sure Joe Delera bet, because Joe Delera has bet every Josh Hart triple-double in history, I'm sure. So Hart rebounds game to game, Hart rebounding leader. Anytime you have a series with Embiid, and maybe this is why we're not getting the markets, Embiid is going to skew the market so that if you don't want Embiid on the bet, there's going to be value elsewhere to have. And I think Josh Hart rebounding, like especially if the book that you're playing is total rebounds and not rebounds per game, because let's be honest, Joel Embiid might miss a game or might have to come out of a game or something. So that's one that I'll be looking for. I mentioned DiVincenzo threes. You mentioned Jalen Brunson on the points. That is a similar case where Joel Embiid has to be priced as the favorite.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one that's really interesting, looking at that Miami game again, if Embiid is kind of this like injured hub and the Knicks can't adjust, his assist numbers are actually pretty good. They jumped by a lot this season, and there's no James Harden in this series. There's no Tyrese Halliburton in this series. Brunson averages around 7, I believe. Maxey, I think even less than that. Embiid, I bet, is going to be a really long number to lead in assists. If he's kind of like, I'm going to post up on the perimeter and either shoot open threes or pass to people because I don't want to go bang in the post with these physical Knicks, I could totally see him as a fun long shot assist leader if we get a crazy number like that Jokic threes one.
I'll push a little bit back on that, just that as I looked at the season series, which again probably doesn't matter that much, I think Brunson had at least 8 assists in 3 of the 4 games. Like he had like 8, 9, and 12 in those games. Now maybe that's because the Sixers defense stunk because Embiid wasn't playing, so maybe not relevant. But the floor was a little higher for him. So at least for me, that's probably not one that I'm looking for. I have to give out my Sixers future here, even though you can't possibly think that I believe in it at this point, given everything I've said in the last half hour about this team. I just think the possible upside for the Sixers that I don't even know if I believe in, but I'm playing the number. I'm playing the long tail, the positive, good outcome of the upside. Philadelphia to win the East is plus 850 at some books. Before the play-in, that was plus 900. That doesn't make any sense to me. They had a chance to not make the playoffs at all, and they're in the playoffs now, and quite frankly, they clearly got the better matchup here. Like, there's nothing to do with the Knicks. You don't want to play the Celtics. You don't want to be in the Celtics version of the bracket. They get the better half of the bracket. They got the draw that they wanted. They are in the actual playoff. It does not check out to me that all happening should only drop it from 900 to 850, and I already thought 900 was too short of a price anyway. So again, I don't expect this ticket to cash. I don't like the Sixers. I don't believe in Joel Embiid. I don't believe any of this stuff. But the numbers, if Joel Embiid does hit, if the Sixers roster hits, the numbers to me say that they effectively would be co-favorites with Boston. And I don't believe that in my heart, but I will believe it with my wallet because I trust the numbers, and this is a numbers play for me. And I just can't get past feeling that Boston, Denver finals that we all want to see, something is going to go awry there. And I find myself looking for other options because we've got 2 heavy favorites. And if there's a heavy favorite, Brandon's coming on to pick an underdog and make a long shot case and apparently talking third person. So I'm going to give you the floor one more time just to shred my Philly plus 850 East Futures ticket before we get out of here.
No, I'll say I won't fully shred. I'm gonna put it in the shredder for a second, and then look at it and see how it's going. I actually do agree that is the way to play the Sixers if you want to be on them. Joe Delera threw it out on Buckets Live as well. Like, if you are believing in this Philly team, I think you just go with, all right, it is fitness for Embiid, not health. The knee is fine. Where I get nervous is, again, when I see Joel Embiid in the playoffs at 80%, that number goes down, not up. At least historically, we have not seen the number go up and him be more healthy. So that is my biggest fear. And if I just math it, if I'm like, I have the Sixers about 45% in this series, even if I call them a coin flip against, Bucks or Pacers, maybe that now we're down to like 22.5. Against the Celtics, do I really, the implied of plus 900 is like what, 11 or 10%? Do I really make them like 40% against the Celtics? Maybe if they've gotten that far, that's the case. I think that they would be, they are playing that well. They maybe are about a 40% series price. To me, it's like, that's a good number. I don't need to fully play it. So I won't shred it. I'll just kind of put it to the side and watch you enjoy and come back next year and have you say 10 more wins to cash your Sixers to win the conference ticket.
That's right. I'm still sitting on that Jazz. What was that? 2020, 2021, my Western series to win the West. I'm just 10 more wins away from the Jazz, whose players are now laughingly on my team, Jim. They've traded their players to my team, who I am now picking against. So, yeah, look, I am absolutely going to have my Sixers future and still be willing to bet against the Sixers game to game, even series to series. If you're wondering, how can you have bet on a futures ticket but think it's a coin flip in the first round matchup? It's because those are two different reads.
Yeah.
You can get through a series. You can be right about a coin flip. Like, look, if they play 3 coin flip series and I get plus 850, I should take that bet. Those are odds in my favor on 3 coin flips. Now, they're not getting 3 coin flips because Boston is not a coin flip, but both sides can be true as a long shot's better. I know you know this, Jim, but to our listeners, I'm preemptively answering your question. You can take the long shot ticket and still play honestly along the way. So, Knicks, Sixers, we're on opposite sides. You're on Knicks minus 110. I'm amending my best bet. Jim, you got me to amend my best bet. Matt would be so proud. I'm getting down to Sixers in 5, Sixers in 6. I didn't have the numbers to give you. I should have been able to look those up in all this time since we've been talking for 8 hours. Thanks, David Payne, our producer, for getting this out to everybody.
Can I shout one thing really quick for the action universe? I know we're like about to wrap. I'm like, let me do one more thing real quick. If you listen to Wonder Goal, or Payoff Pitch, anything with Anthony DeMundo, he and I have a head-to-head. You should totally go trash talk him on Twitter, or trash talk me if you're on the Philly side of it. But that'll be a fun one. A little in-house head-to-head, no vig, just straight up little action there. So that'll be a fun one to watch as well.